What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and it looks like Evergrande has done it again. Another buzzer beater in the middle of the night, making their bond interest payment that was coming due. They only had hours left of their 30-day grace period before officially entering into default, and it looks like they came up with the money at the last minute to make that payment. So they've bought themselves another couple of days, but they're not out of the woods yet. And as you're going to see, there's still more Chinese developers who are defaulting even as we speak. You ready? Hit it. Thank you for joining me. I'm Jack Gamble, and I'm Nobody Special, and it looks like Evergrande will live another day. They made their payments in the middle of the night, again, with just hours left on the clock. This is the second time in 2 weeks that they've done this, where they were right up against the expiration of their 30-day grace period for missed bond interest payments on offshore bonds, and they came up with the money at the last minute, thus resetting the clock. Meanwhile, another story that didn't get a lot of attention, Oceanwide, another Chinese developer, recently defaulted on offshore bonds and had a very large development project in the city of San Francisco seized as collateral. Now, before we get into these details, folks, I have to ask you, could you please give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell? It really helps me out, and I'd be forever in your debt. And with that, we are going to shrink my big fat melon of a head, and let's get into the details. And here we go. Evergrande makes coupon payment before Friday deadline, sources. Again, when you hear coupon payment, we are not talking about 25 cents off a can of chunky soup. We are talking about the interest due on the bond. This was an interest-only payment. October 29th, developer China Evergrande Group has made an interest payment for an offshore bond before a grace period expired on Friday. Two people with direct knowledge of the matter said, narrowly averting a catastrophic default for the second time in a week. The property developer, which staved off a default last week by securing an $83.5 million for the last-minute payment of interest on a bond, needed to make another $47.5 million in coupon payments to bondholders by Friday, i.e. today. Failure to pay by Friday deadline would have triggered cross defaults on all of the company's $19 billion worth of bonds in international capital markets in what would have been the world's second largest emerging markets corporate debt default. Evergrande did not respond to Reuters' request for comment. The people declined to be identified due to the sensitivity of the matter, and Reuters was not able to determine the source of funds used to make the interest payments. Now, we may be able to guess where that money came from because a couple days ago, this story broke. Chinese authorities have told Evergrande's billionaire founder to use his own money to pay down the company's $300 billion in debt. What a concept that people who run these companies into the ground are on the hook for the damage that they do. Very interesting. And there is the man of the hour, Mr. Hui Kaiyan. Pardon my pronunciation, folks. I do not get out much. But there he is there. Poor Hui Kaiyan had to come up with $47.5 million to bail out the money his company borrowed. Beijing has instructed Evergrande's founder to pay the company's debt with personal funds. Hui Kaiyan's net worth is about $7.6 billion, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. Evergrande's debt pile is $300 billion. So as you can see, Mr. Hui's $7.6 billion in net worth is not going to be sufficient to pay off Evergrande's debt. So they're only buying themselves time. Now, going back to that original article, there's a couple of things I want to point out. That bonds from China Evergrande are still trading at 75% of their face value, i.e. 25 cents on the dollar. So the bond market still does not believe Evergrande is going to be able to pay back its money. And their 2023 bonds are yielding 190% right now. Now, a yield of 190%, as I've said many times, when you see a yield anywhere above 10% that claims to be a risk-free yield, run. There is no such thing as a risk-free 10% yield. Certainly not a risk-free 190% yield. Good God. This debt is garbage. And I also want to add down here that Evergrande missed coupon payments totaling nearly $280 million on its bonds that were due September 23rd. That was the payment that it made last week. September 29th, the payment that it made this morning or last night, and October 11th. So October 11th is the next 30-day grace period. And as you can see, Evergrande has really just bought themselves about another 12 or 13 days before they face default again. So they have restarted the clock, and Evergrande's official default is now 12 days away. This is the second time that they've been able to grant themselves a stay of execution. Now, again, I want to add this does not mean that the story at Evergrande is over. It just means that the default has not officially happened yet. Evergrande sales, as we reported last week, are down 97% year over year. So the real estate market in China is absolutely frozen solid right now. Nothing is moving. Okay, so Evergrande has basically no income. The only chance they have of raising any money is to liquidate assets. And as we've seen in previous weeks, the sale of their headquarters tower and the sale of their property management business, one after another, they've been unable to unload any of these assets and raise any kind of capital needed to pay these interest payments, let alone pay down the debt. So Evergrande's default is virtually guaranteed at this point. Okay, it's just a matter of time. They're just buying themselves time. Again, this money probably came from the founder, as the Chinese government is basically seizing the assets of the people who got rich off of Evergrande and using it to pay some of these bondholders. But there's not enough to seize there. There's not enough assets that Evergrande can sell. Just the act of selling Evergrande's assets will devalue the rest of their assets, thus making their problem worse and problems worse for other developers. So default is still virtually guaranteed for this company. Now, the other thing I want to point out, we've talked about other developers that have been going under recently, like Cynic, like Fantasia, like Modern Land earlier this week, and it looks like yesterday there was another one that went under. So again, we are going to shrink me because I've got another story to talk about here, and that is a company called Oceanwide. Creditors seize collateral from Chinese developer Oceanwide after missed payment. And this story came out yesterday, didn't get a lot of attention. Chinese developer, here, let's zoom in a little bit. Chinese developer Oceanwide Holdings said on Thursday that holders of corporate debt issued by two of its offshore units have taken possession of the debt's collateral after the units failed to repay the maturing notes. In a Shenzhen Stock Exchange filing, Oceanwide said that the company was in active talks with holders of the two Hong Kong dollar notes worth a combined 2.5 billion Hong Kong dollars or $321 million US in pursuit of a solution. Oceanwide also said it was assessing the impact of the share and project collateral takeover on its operations and finances. And scrolling down a little bit here, Oceanwide Holdings International issued 1.4 billion Hong Kong dollars worth of notes to the Singapore-based financial services firm in March of 2019, using its shares in China Oceanwide Holdings and a San Francisco project as collateral. Now, a lot of folks have been asking me, what's the impact of this China real estate collapse on the U.S.? Is this going to affect us? Is this going to affect the real estate market here? And the short answer is, I don't know, folks. There are just way too many moving parts. There are way too many players involved, too many banks involved. There's the shadow banking and the off-balance sheet activity, and everything is so interconnected and convoluted these days that there's really just no telling how this is going to affect the U.S. economy or the European economy. However, it's reasonable to say it's definitely going to affect the U.S. markets and the European markets, and we're already starting to see that with this story. And I want to talk to you about the Oceanwide Center in San Francisco, because that is the collateral that has just been seized. And here it is, the Oceanwide Center, 51st Street in San Francisco. It's a mixed-use development currently under construction. It was supposed to be 2 skyscrapers, including the second largest, or what would be the second largest skyscraper in San Francisco. It's still under construction. It's not done yet. And this project has seen its share of difficulty over the years, changing hands several times, several bankruptcies, bought and sold, and now it looks like it's happening again. And to say that this project is going under would be an understatement, because as I did a little bit of research on this project, I came across this little gem. Another building in San Francisco appears to be sinking. Oh my goodness. A few blocks from the 58-story Millennium Tower, dubbed the Leaning Tower of San Francisco, another building appears to be sinking. An 18-story building in the city's financial district appears to have settled up to 3/8 of an inch because of the construction of 2 high-rises on either side, the San Francisco Chronicle reported. The 2 high-rises under construction is the Oceanwide Center. The building at 25 Jesse Street serves as the western headquarters for the FDIC. It was built in the 1980s. To the north and south of it, developers began construction last year on a pair of 61-story and 54-story towers that will be called Oceanwide Center. City inspectors launched an investigation in February after receiving an anonymous complaint that warned the building is sinking. At roughly the same time, a monitoring report filed in March by developer Oceanwide indicated that about 24 columns supporting the building at 25 Jesse Street had settled by no more than 3/8 of an inch, and said it did not pose significant safety risks. Not so sure if I owned that building, I would share the optimism. I just want to put this in perspective. The Millennium Tower, which is the famous sinking building in San Francisco, has sunk 17 inches since opening in 2008. It's tilting 14 inches to the north. It has been dubbed the Leaning Tower of San Francisco. What a mess, folks. What a mess. So, in short, Evergrande has bought themselves another couple of days. They are not out of the woods yet, and as we've seen with this Oceanwide fiasco, there is no shortage of Chinese developers that continue to go belly up day in and day out, one after another like dominoes. As I mentioned in a video a couple of days ago, it's the Chinese banks that you need to worry about. With all these developers going under and all of these loans going bad and all these projects being idled, it's inevitable that this contagion is going to reach the Chinese banks, and that's when we find out just how global this crisis is going to go. But as we've already seen now with this Oceanwide Center here in San Francisco in the U.S., that the collapse of the Chinese housing market is going to have ripple effects in the U.S., in Europe, in Australia, and these other markets. Folks, that's all I got for you on this one. I want to thank you for your time and for watching this video. Don't forget my live stream and Power Hour starts at 3:15 Eastern Time today. So I hope you're able to join me for that to wrap up the week. Don't forget, hit that big thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell. It really helps me out. And until next time, live small and dream big.